Adaf mem beis amid beis. My lav b'sha amad b'din. Abai assumes, and again, this is in the safe of the Bryce. We haven't yet gotten to the ratio. It's going to come around the bend. That we're talking about a case of amad b'din, which means that Ruvain is Tovea Shimon after there already was Hamon B'din. And the Chiddush of Reb Shimon in this brisa is that although, as a general rule, after Hamon B'din a Knas is upgraded to the status of Mammon, that's for all dinim, but not for the din of Korban Shvuah. With regard to the din of Korban Shvuah, since we started with Knas, it was Ikro Knas. Therefore, even though right now it's Mammon, it's after Hamon B'din, nevertheless, there's no Korban Shvuah. Because this case of Ikro B'Knas is radically different than all the other cases that the Torah listed in the parasha of Korban Shvuah. So basically, in this brisa, the seif of which we've already seen, Abai interprets it that the Tovea says that there was another Bezdin where I was Tovea you previously, and there Bezdin gave a ruling that you're chayav. And now, pay me up. And he denies the whole story. He takes a shvuah to that effect, and he's moda. And in that case, there's no carbon shvuah according to Rav Shimon. And the reason for that is because it's ikro knas. Gemara says, well, Rabbah says, I deny it. That's not the case in this brisa, but rather it's shalo amad b'din. And if it's shalo ad b'din, the chiyuv has not yet been established, and therefore we're dealing with a case of knas. And with regard to knas, there's no halach of kfiras mamon. Now let's spend a minute trying to explain that. This is a very sensitive point, but it really holds almost the key to the whole. Kfiras mamon means that when the defendant denies the claim of the plaintiff, he exempts himself from payment. Had he admitted and confessed that the claim of the plaintiff was correct, then he would have to pay. So the concept halachically called kfiras mamon is defined as a kfira which saves him money. His denial of the claim lets him off the hook, and he doesn't have to pay as the claimant claims he has to pay. Had he admitted the flip side of kfira, which would be hodah, he would be off the hook. I'm sorry, the opposite. Had he admitted that the claim of the plaintiff was true, he would have to pay because hodah baltin k'me'edim. Knas doesn't fit into that mold because in knas, whether or not he denies the claim, or even had he admitted to the claim of the plaintiff, he would be off the hook. He wouldn't have to pay. So that's not called kfiras mamon. The Torah in the parsha of Korban Shvuah made a condition on the korban that it's got to be a case of kfiras mamon. But in the case of knas, it's not a kfiras mamon, again, because he doesn't gain anything through that kfira. He doesn't let himself off the hook as far as the claim and the payment is concerned, because even if he had been moda, he would be potter because moda b'knas is potter. But all this is true before Hamad B'din. But once there's Hamad B'din, and now the plaintiff is being tovea because of a psak of another bezdin, then if he be moda, he would be potter. And therefore, when he denies it and he takes a shvuah to that effect, that's called a kfiras mamon. He gains and exempts himself from payment. And now Abaye says, wait a minute, let's go back to the Bryce. Until now, we've been studying the safe of the Bryce. Let's go back to the ratio of the Bryce. But with the Reisha, I'm going to prove to you that in the Reisha, it's a case of Misha Omad B'Din. And therefore, Sefer Nama, we have to maintain the symmetry of the Brisa. The Sefer is also a case of Misha Omad B'Din. And now we're going to read the Reisha, analyze the Reisha, and Abai is going to prove to Rabbah, to the point to which Rabbah is going to have to be modeh, that we're talking about a case of Misha Omad B'Din. K'tani Reisha, Ainli Eladvarm Shemeshalmim Alemis HaKeren. When did the Torah say that you have to bring a korban shvua if you denied and took a shvua to that effect? That's only Tashlume Kefel. I'm sorry, that's only case of Mishal Alemis HaKeren. It means he has a kfiras mamon, let's say Pikadon, Gzela, etc., where had he confessed he'd be chai. But Tashlume Kefel, which is a knas, Tashlume Arbav Chamisha for Tavachul Machar is a knas. Onus Umafate is a knas of Chamishim, Motzi Shema of Mea. Minayin, how do we know that in these cases, if he denies the claim and he takes a shvua to that effect, then he confesses, that he has to bring a korban shvua. After all, in the parsha, these cases that we mentioned of knas are not mentioned. So how do we know that they're also included in the parsha of korban shvua? Amud Lomar, there's an extra word in the parsha for a ribu. Umala mal ribu. There's a double language. Umala mal. And this teaches me that if a person denies a payment which is knas, even though it's not listed in the enumerated list, nevertheless, through this extra umala mal, we're going to put him back into the parsha, or shall we say, extend the parsha of korban shvua to apply even in this case. Echidami. What's going on? E delo amad b'din. If you're going to tell me, Rabbah, like you said before, that there was no amad b'din, is kfela mi'ika? This is not a kfiras mamon. No one would deny that this is out of the purview, out of the parsha of korban shvua, because there's no kfiras mamon. The machayev of korban shvua is kfiras mamon. It's not a kfiras mamon. Even if he would admit it that he stole the property, he would still be parted from kfiras because most of the knas is parted. We must assume that in the ratio we're talking about a case of Amad B'Din. And that's why the Chachamim hold that after Amad B'Din, when the plaintiff is suing based on his claim that there was such a ruling in another Beis Din, there is a korban shvua if the defendant denies the claim and takes a shvua to that. The Reisha b'Amad B'Din v'Sefer Nami b'Amad B'Din. Now let's keep in mind, the Reisha is the Rabbanon, and the Sefer is Rabbi Shimon. And Abaye proves logically that even in the Reisha, within the context of the Rabbanon of Rabbi Shimon, we could only be mechayev a korban shvua in the case of knas if it was after Amad B'Din. Rav Shimon in the Sefer is going to disagree, and he's going to say that even after Amad B'Din, there still is an exclusion from the parsha of korban shvua. He doesn't have this drasha of umala mal because it's a davar she'ikro knas. And now at this point, the ball is in Rabbah's court. Amalei. Rabbah says the following, you know what? I can always insist that there's a difference between the Reisha and the Sefer. Yachilna l'shnuya l'cha Reisha b'shamad b'din, Sefer b'shalo amad b'din. Hayud var melon. We've had such cases in which the brisa should be divided into two, a brick wall in between the Reish and the Sefer. However, shinuye dechika lo meshanin. That's an answer which is dachuk. It's not something that's very smooth and comfortable. And the imkain, and I'll tell you why it's dachuk, to split between the Reish and the Sefer, because amartali, you're going to tell me that if there's a split between the Reish and the Sefer, then according to me, meaning according to Rabbah, the entire brisa from beginning to the end is really Reb Shimon. Listni Reish Reb Shimon Omer, or Listni Sefer Divrei Rabbi Shimon. Why is Reb Shimon quoted by name at the beginning of the Sefer, unless there's a machlok between the Reish and the Sefer? So I'm not going to go down that path. I'm not going to give you a shinuya dechuk. Ela kula b'sha'omad b'din. And now Rabbah rescinds and revokes his original answer, and he admits to Abaye's argument that the Bryce is talking about b'sha'omad b'din. And now we're going to explain the difference between the Reish and the Sefer as the machlokus between the Rabbanon and Reb Shimon. The Rabbanon and the Reish are going to say, look, it was after Amud B'din. If it's after Amud B'din, then Knas was upgraded and transformed into Mama. And once having done so, then his kfir is a kfir's Mama. Had he admitted and confessed to the claim of the plaintiff, he would have to pay based on his own admission, and therefore his kfir is a kfir's Mama. He's in the parsha of Korban Shvuah. And that's called Reisha Rabban. Sefer Rabbi Shimon. And the Sefer goes a step further, reflecting the sheet of Rabbi Shimon. Even after Amud B'din, it still remains Knas as far as Korban Shvuah is concerned. And why? Because v'kichesh ba'misa, with that whole list, excluding a payment which be'ikaro, as it emerges, it's a knas, even though now it's after Amud B'din. One second, Modin I think means Abaye. So let me just. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Modina I Rabba Lecha Abaye, moded to Abaye. That as far as Korban Shvuah, despite the fact that there was Hamad B'din, Rabbi Shimon holds that it still retains its status as Knas, and therefore it's parted from a Korban Shvuah. Because after V'kichesh, we have the enumerated list, all of which are Mammon and not Knas. So it's Ikro Knas. Mina, when I said to you, in response to your question about, I, Rabbah, said to you, Mamona Havi, Lo Risha Labana. I wasn't talking about the specific parsha of Korban Shvuah, but I was talking in a more universal, general sense. That as far as all dinim are concerned, and we'll see Yerusha in a second, once there was Amud B'din, we upgrade Knas to Mama. It becomes a full-fledged Chiyuv Mama, like Halva, like Pikadon. And my nafkamina, that if, let's say, after Amud B'din, the plaintiff dies, then Lo Risha Labanov, that money, the claim and the collection thereof, will now be inherited by his heirs. Even though we have a principle that there's no Yerush on a Knas, but it's no longer Knas. There already was Hamad B'din. But as far as Korban Shvuah is concerned, there we have a unique sheet of Reb Shimon, that even after Hamad B'din, it remains and retains its status of Knas, and it's excluded from Korban Shvuah. And that's based on the Kichej. Esvei Abai says, what about the Mishnah back on Daf Mem Aleph on Beis Rav Shimon Omer? Im lo espiko ligvos ad shemesa of harein shel atzma. If before Gvir the father died, then it's not his heirs, meaning her brothers, his sons, who will inherit the knas, because there was no Gvir b'chaya'ah. And therefore she collects the knas. Ve'i amrit maman havi lo rishlo panavli atzma mai diachin boy lemehev. Rabbi, you're in trouble. So argues Abai, because if you claim that as far as all dinim, universal halacha is concerned, a knas is transformed into mammon with hamad b'din, why is it that if the father died after hamad b'din, it's not his heirs who inherit the knas, but rather she collects the knas? Why is that so? It's no longer knas, it's mammon. And mammon is subject to inheritance laws, as opposed to knas. Omar Rava, Hai Milsa Kasha Bei Rabba Rav Yosef Esrim V'Tartin Shnin. So it seems that this entire dialogue between Abai and Rabba took place 22 years before the death of Rabba. So if you know the death date of Rabba, subtract 22 years, that's the date in which Abai raised this question to Rabba. And Rabba was stumped, and he died going to his grave without an answer to this question. Now, with the death of Rabba, who was the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Yosef steps into Rabba's shoes, and he becomes the Rosh Hashiva. V'lo ifrik ad the base Rabba, the Yosef Rav Yosef Barish. Rav Yosef is now appointed as the Rosh Hashiva, Upirka. And now Rav Yosef, as the Rosh Hashiva, finds an answer to the question that stumped Rabba all his life. Shani Hassan, although it's true that any knas is upgraded to the status of mammon with hamad b'din, and therefore, if the hamad b'din took place during the father's lifetime, he should be able to bequeath that knas to his heirs. Shani Hassan, but the knas of onus and mafat is unique. The Omar Kro, the pasuk says, "V'nasana icha chopevi mola via nara chamishim kes." And now we have to underline the word v'nasa. Lo zichsa Torah li'av el mishas nesina, which is what we call gvir. The father, even after hamad b'din, has not yet acquired ownership over the knas until v'nasan, until the money is in the bank. V'chika Omar Rabba, when Rabba said to Abaye that after hamad b'din, knas is transformed into mammon, orisha lebana b'shar knases. That applies to all other knases, like shloshim shel eved, like meah shel motzi shemra, like Hamis Shori as Avdo. Or as this knas of ones and pitui, The Torah says v'nasan, and everything depends upon the sina. Hamada Bedin is not enough. Therefore, the father died between Hamada Bedin and the Nasan and Gvia. The money belongs to her and not to the father. So the Gemara asks the following kasha on Rav Yosef's answer. Elameata, are you telling me that whenever the Torah uses the word for Nasan, it depends upon Gvia and not Hamada Bedin? Is the Gabi Eved, if a Shar Hamud would kill an Eved, Dichsiv Shloshim, Kesef Shloshim Shkolim Yitain Ladonov, again the Lashon Nesina, is Hachinami, should we apply the same derivation, same principle of Lo Zichsa Torah Liadon, Ela Mishas Nesina? And therefore, Hamada Bedin would not be enough to generate and upgrade the Knas to the status of Mammon. We'd have to wait until after Gviyah. We don't know of such a law. Rav Yosef never mentioned the cases of the case of Eved, of Shloshim Shal Eved. So Gemara says Yitein L'chud v'Nasan L'chud. The words are not identical. The word v'Nasan is in the past tense, whereas Yitain is in the future tense. V'Nasan also means in the future, but that's because of the added vav. But without the prefix of the vav, Nasan means he already gave. That's called Lashon Avar. And what that means is that the Torah is saying that when does the father get the knas of onus u'mafata? That's only nasan in the past tense, meaning the money was already given. Nasan in the past it was given, but in the case of Shloshim Shalev, the Torah says yitain in the future tense, and that means that from the time of Hamada Bedin, when Bezdin already paskin, the gavel went down and they ruled that he has to pay for Shloshim Shalev. At that point of Hamada Bedin, that's when the Baal Hashar, meaning the plaintiff who lost his shar, it's considered as if he already collected that money. If he dies, it goes to his heirs. Ihachi, the Gemara says, if according to Rav Shimon, by virtue of v'nasan in the future tense, the knas of onus mefat is different than all other knasos, is tamalov v'kichesh. Why did Rav Shimon bother deriving this halacha from a kichesh? Leave it out. We have it in the word v'nasan. It says tamalov v'nasan miboil. It should have said v'nasan. Why does it say tamalov v'kichesh? Omarova ki itzruk v'kichesh. When do we need v'kichesh? Kigon sha'omda b'din u'bagra u'mesa. So what's the case? There was Hamada B'din. Bezdin Paskin that the Mafat has to pay to the father. She was a Nara at the time. But before the collection, she became a Bogeres. And once she became a Bogeres, she becomes the Bailim over the Knas. Umesa. And now as a Bogeres, she dies, and the money of the Knas has not yet been transferred into her bank account. Chasam kike yaris avia mina dida kayaris. The father has no independent rights to collect that knas. At the end of the day, the knas will go into his bank account, but not because of his koch. He doesn't have the koch to collect the knas because she was a bogeres at the time the Amud did. So now, if we only had the word v'nosan, it wouldn't have taught me anything here. Because v'nosan is talking about v'nosan l'avia nara. The avia nara is out of the picture in this case. Because she's a bogeres. The only rights he would have to collect the knas when she dies is through inheritance laws, because her father inherits his daughter. So therefore, when she collects the knas, again, she hadn't collected it and she died, but her rights to the knas are rights of mama, because as far as she's concerned, there was a hamada b'din. Once it was hamada b'din, now she becomes a bogeres. He has rights to that knas, and that's mama now, because it's after hamada b'din. For that, I need a pasuk v'kichesh to tell me that as far as korban shvuah is concerned, v'kichesh excludes that which is ikro knas. Meikaro, it was a knas. Gemara asks, "Ihachi yotzu elu shein knas," where Reb Shimon says we're going to exclude these because of knas. Mamanu. I mean, it's after Hamad B'din. Omar of Akbar Yitzchok. This is the secret to the whole sugi that we've been saying over and over again. Yotzu elu sheikron knas. These are not similar to all those that are listed under V'kichesh in the Parsha of Korban Shvuah, because ikro knas. Now Abaye asks a kasha on Rabbah. Again, according to Rabbah in Reb Shimon, Korban Shvuah is different than all Dinei Torah, and even after Hamad B'din, which makes it Mammon, and he'd be potter if he was Moder. Nevertheless, he's not chayav a Korban Shvuah on his kfira because it's ikro knas, and that we're going to derive from V'kichesh. So Abai is now going to ask him from a Mishnah in Masechet Shvuos, which we saw earlier. Esvei, Rabbi Shimon Poter. The Mishnah in Shvuos records that Rabbi Shimon says he doesn't bring a Korban Shvuah when he was kover, when he's kofer the Tvias Ha'av on Ones or Mafat, and he took a Shvuah and then he admitted it. Says Rabbi Shimon, She'eno Meshalim Knas al pi atzmo. This is not a case of Kfiras Momon, because even had he confessed instead of denying the claim, he would still be pot, because Modu Knas pot. Is Taima de lo Omad B'din. Why is it that there's no Kfiras Momon to be Mechayv Korban Shvuah? Because even had he admitted he'd be potter, that's because there was no Amad B'din. Or Amad B'din, if in a Bezdin they already passed him that he's Chayav or Ones Umefata, and then he was Modeh, he would have to pay. It's no longer Modeh V'Knas Potter, because again, as we said before, fundamentally, it became Mama. Ha'amad B'din, the Meshalim al pi atzmo, had he confessed, he would have to pay. His Korban Shvuah nami Mechayet. Why should we potter from a Korban Shvuah? The whole lump, this why Reb Shimon says you potter from Korban Shvuah is because there's no Kfiras Momon. Because even had you admitted, you'd be potter because Modeh V'Knas Potter. Here's after Hamad B'din. Because after Hamad B'din, had he been Modeh, be Chayet. That's really a bona fide Kfiras Momon, and therefore he should be Chayet a Korban Shvuah. And Rabbi answers, Rabbi Shimon l'divrei d'Rabbanan Karmelu l'didi afal gav d'Yomid B'din. We have the Yalfus of a Kichech, that anything that's Ikro Knas is not included in the Parsha of Korban Shvuah. So therefore, Gav the Yomi B'Din, even though now it's transformed and upgraded to the status of Mammon, and Modav Knas is no longer is suspended, and instead he be Chayat, and therefore there's a Kfiras Mammon. But nevertheless, I say that there is no Korban Shvuah, not because there's no Kfiras Mammon, but because of Rachmana Patre, the Torah excluded him for Korban Shvuah under the law of Vakichech, with all the listed enumerated cases. Reb Shimon turns to the Chachamim, and according to you, that you disagree with me, and you hold that there's a Chi of Korban Shvuah on any Kfiras Mammon, namely, after Hamad B'Din, it's a Kfiras Mammon, and therefore it generates a Chi of Shvuah. Oduli Mias Heichadolo Amad B'Din. At least if the Tovea, let's say the father was Tovea the Anos, and it was before Hamad B'Din, there should be no Chi of Korban Shvuah. Why? The Chi Katova, Knasa Katova. When the father is being Tovea Ones, he's being Tovea Knas. So what? Again, there's no Kfiras Mammon here because had he been mowed there, he'd still be Potter. Here on the top of Mem Gimel, Umoda B'Knas Potter. So what's the counter argument here? In the case of before Hamad B'Din, the Rabbanan should logically be mowed there, and there's no Korban Shvuah because there's no Kfiras Mammon. Because had he even had he been mowed, he'd be Potter. This is tomorrow's sugi. Let's just give an introduction to the sugi for tomorrow. In every case of onus and mafata, there are two different variables. There's the knas, chamishim shkolim, and then there's mammon, boches pgam, maybe even tsar in the case of onus. So now, when the father was tovea, the ones or the mafata, what was he being tovea? Well, actually, he'd be tovea A plus B, both knas and mammon. His tefillah is on Boshas Upagam. The knas gets schlepped along. And therefore, had the defendant, the accused Anos, confessed the crime, he'd be chayav Boshas Upagam. He would be confirming and affirming the claim of the claimant, namely the Ab. So therefore, when he was kofar bo, he has a kfiras mama, and therefore he's chayav a korban shvuah. Again, if the tovea says you owe me a knas, if he said that explicitly, and then the defendant, the accused, would deny the claim and take a shvuah to that effect, he'd be potter from a korban shvuah because there's no kfiras mama, because modu knas potter. But since the tovea did not say anything, he just said anasta upitisa is piti, implying that he's being tovea not just the knas, but also boshas pagam, which is mammon. Then the denial of the accused is a full-fledged kfiras mammon that generates a chi of korban shvuah. And tomorrow we're going to analyze this machlokes about whether the tviyah of the father nastas piti is on knas or it's on boshas upagam. That'll be Mirza Hashem, our discussion for tomorrow. Okay, then let me wish you a great day.